Welcome and thanks for joining me. So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. When you hear about AI in the global headlines, it's usually one story. But what's happening on the ground in Africa? Well, that's something else entirely. A story of purpose-driven innovation that's solving real-world challenges from the ground up.
Okay, let's dive right in. So much of the global AI conversation is all about automation, efficiency, that kind of thing. But the story unfolding in Africa, it's being written with a totally different goal in mind.
And this slide, wow, it just lays it out so clearly. You've got the global story over here, which is mostly about making existing systems run a little bit better. But in Africa, they're using AI to build brand new systems from scratch, to bridge these huge gaps that have been holding back progress for decades. So it's not just tech for the sake of tech. It is absolutely about purpose-driven AI.
And this isn't just theory, right? This focus on impact is already creating real, tangible solutions. We're talking about AI platforms that are helping farmers actually boost their income. We're seeing machine learning tools diagnosing diseases where there are hardly any specialist doctors. And get this, even language tools that make sure a kid's education isn't held back just because of the language they speak at home. These are real-world problems getting real-world fixes.
Okay, so let's pull back a bit. Let's look at the bigger picture, the macro level, and see how this whole vision is actually being driven by national strategy. And Ethiopia is just a fantastic case study for how a country can really grab the reins and shape its own AI future.
So Ethiopia is not just sitting around waiting for the AI revolution to show up. No, they are driving it. They've set up a National Artificial Intelligence Institute, which is this really deliberate top-down move to create a hub, a center of gravity for innovation that can then spread out across every single part of the economy. And would you look at the results? They're already incredibly impressive. And what's so important here is how specific this is. We're not just talking about vague ideas. We're talking about internationally patented breakthroughs, things like tech for detecting breast cancer, or diagnosing diseases in coffee crops, which is a huge deal for their exports. And it's even changing how government works, with platforms like Mizob that pull together more than 100 public services into one single streamlined system.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But how does that grand national vision actually play out on the ground? Well, this is where you find the individual innovators, the startups, the people building practical tech for the real world. And a lot of times they're dealing with some pretty unique challenges.
And a huge piece of this puzzle is a technology called Edge AI. Think about it. So many AI tools need a constant, strong internet connection and big, powerful cloud servers. Well, Edge AI, it's a total game changer. It literally puts the smarts directly onto smaller, low-power devices. And what that means is they can work offline and they're much more affordable.
This technology is just tailor-made for places where resources are tight. Just imagine diagnostic tools in a remote clinic that doesn't have reliable internet, or smart farming sensors out on a farm miles from anywhere, or even educational apps in a classroom. Edge AI just makes all of this possible. It's about building smarter, faster, more sustainable solutions that are actually designed for the reality of the situation.
So what does it actually take to build one of these things? Well, under the hood, there's a pretty clear blueprint. You need a brain, right? A core engine to think and reason. You need a secure way to get at data. You need a simple interface so a real person can actually use it. And you need a memory to keep track of everything. This is the basic Lego set, the foundation for creating all these practical, real-world tools.
But in practice, what does that technical blueprint actually do? Well, it can power really simple, super user-friendly tools that save people a ton of valuable time. Imagine a small business owner. They could use a tool just like this to automate all their marketing stuff, which frees them up to, actually focus on growing the business. It's just a perfect example of taking this really sophisticated AI and turning it into a practical tool that really empowers people. Okay, so let's pull back out again. For all of this amazing innovation happening on the ground to be possible, you've got to have a strong foundation. So, what are those big building blocks you need to create a really thriving AI ecosystem? It really boils down to three crucial pillars. First up, you need what's called catalytic capital. That's the funding that's brave enough to take on the risk of brand new ideas. Second, you need people who are AI ready. And third, you've got to have production-grade tech. And that just means you're moving beyond cool little experiments to build reliable systems that can actually scale up.
And this is so important. This is just as much about people as it is about the machines. Building up human capacity is absolutely essential. A workforce that's ready for this needs the hard skills, for sure, the math, the coding, the analytics, but they also need a really deep understanding of social dynamics and ethics. Because at the end of the day, the tech is only as good as the people building it and looking after it.
And you know what? This work is already happening. We've got organizations like the African Institute for Artificial Intelligence that are making these huge leaps forward. They've already trained over 900 people across the continent, giving them the AI skills and knowledge they need. Okay, so the last piece of this puzzle is making the technology itself professional. This is where a term you might hear, MLOps, or machine learning operations, comes into play. It's basically the set of rules and practices that takes a really clever algorithm and turns it into a tough, reliable tool that you can actually deploy and maintain out there in the real world, at scale. But look, with any tool this powerful, it's a double-edged sword. All this incredible potential, it comes with some equally serious ethical challenges, and we have to face those head-on.
And this quote, wow, it just shows you how easily AI can pick up and even amplify our own human biases. So, an audit of Twitter's old photo cropping algorithm found that it tended to favor certain types of appearances. And here's the kicker. The AI didn't just invent this bias out of nowhere, it learned it from the data we fed it.
And that forces us to ask a really tough, critical question. If the data we're using to teach these systems is already full of our historical and social biases, then how on earth do we stop the AI from just learning all our worst habits? How do we keep it from just becoming a high-tech mirror of our own worst instincts? So, dealing with this, it takes a real strategy. You have to be deliberate about it. To fight algorithmic bias, for example, you have to be super careful about curating diverse data, and you need independent audits. To make sure research is honest, you've got to demand transparency when AI is a co-author. And protecting people's data, that's just non-negotiable if you want to build any kind of public trust. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they are absolutely essential.
So, this is where it all leads. AI gives Africa this incredibly rare chance to kind of leapfrog the old ways of development and write its own digital future, on its own terms. Whether or not it succeeds, well, that's going to depend on context, on collaboration, and on a real, deliberate commitment to building a future that's inclusive and fair for everyone. So the question really isn't if AI is going to have an impact anymore. The real question is, what kind of impact are we going to choose for it to have?